What's up, guys? This is Corey with Earth City Gym, back with another video for y'all. So today we're going to be taking a look over the Dragon Ball Super Celebrations North Carolina top 16 meta. We're going to take a look at over all the lists and kind of examine them, just kind of get a look at them, and just kind of see where it's going to take us from here. Before, about last week, I posted a video just kind of going over, my thoughts on what the meta was kind of going to look like. I got a couple of them right. There was one in particular that you'll see that I was kind of far off on. But, yeah, so let's get on over to DBS decks and let's take a look at those lists. Alright, so here we go, our top 16. Majority of these aren't in a particular order. We didn't get access to the official, final standings. I know who got first and who got second, but other than that, everything's just kind of top 16. We'll take a look over the card dominance chart. So the most dominant card was Senzu Bean, which was really only played in about 34% of decks, which is actually really far down from what you normally see. Normally see several Legend Nimbas and stuff like this, so the Senzu Bean count is really high. There's a couple other blue leaders that were either running only 2 Senzu Beans or even no Senzu Beans, so that kind of really brought those numbers down. Moving on from that, we have 4-Star Ball, which had about a 30% dominance. It was in 25% of the decks. That was played in, again, a majority of the decks. You'll see the Vanilla Gokus that we're going to see. That was in pretty much all of them. Then we've got Defending Father Paragus. That was our super combo for the green. We've got a couple Brolys on top, so this did well. We got 3 green leaders in general, so all of them are playing Paragus. Moving on from that, there's your kind of your standard stuff like Dimension Magic. We got a couple blue leaders. Son Goku, The Adventure Begins. We got a bunch of the Vanilla Goku leaders, so this is that really important card for that deck. So you're just going to see that. Breaking down just the leaders in general. So we had 4 Son Goku Bonds of Friendship, which is the new Vanilla Goku leader from set 6. We had 1 Pan, 1 Super Dragon Balls. We had 1 Lord Slug. We had 2 Janemba. We had 2 Green Broly. We had 2 Yellow Promo Broly, and then we had 2 of the movie or the Broly Pack promo Gogeta leader, the blue one. So that's really interesting to see. That's the first time we've seen that leader show up. So like I said, we're going to go down these lists and kind of take a look at all of these. We're not going to go in any particular order. I will save the first place and the second place decks for last, just because I specifically knows who those are. But other than that, we're just kind of going to go down the list. All right. So first up, we've got Josh Bradley's Lord Slug Hand Control. I'll take a look at the visual view. So again, this is kind of your standard, what you're going to see for the most part out of these Lord Slug decks. There are a couple interesting options that we'll kind of discuss. Like I said, Lord Slug is one of those. I was not expecting it all to do well. As you'll kind of see as we look into the sideboards, I have a really good reason why Slug probably did well, and that's not to take anything away from the person who played it. It was a really smart call because people generally weren't siding against it. I don't know if they just weren't prepared for it. They weren't expecting it. I mean, like I said, I was not expecting it at all, so not being prepared for it was a great time to kind of bring Slug out. So moving on to the list, so we've got a 1-1 split of our 2 double strike cards. I don't think that's overly relevant. You're never going to play either one of these because you're a mono green deck. There's no absolute significance over one of these over the other in the deck, so that's just kind of a preference probably. Obviously, you do have to be careful whenever you're playing the West Supreme Kai, or the East Supreme Kai, excuse me, that you have to officially announce who you're giving double strike to, or it could just be, no one ends up getting double strike. So that's just something to pay attention to. One of the interesting stuff here, he's got a 1-3 split of the 1-drop Gohans. So he's got the 1 crit Gohan, and he's got 3 of the 1-drop draw card, and then you can pay 2 energy, give him plus 15 in crit. So that's an interesting split to me. Personally, I'm not sure why we're running the 1-drop, the draw card. Maybe just as a cycle. I couldn't ever really imagine a situation where you're going to use his ability to give him the plus 15k. You've got other things that you want to be playing on 1 and 2. I guess he felt like either A, he wasn't going to need the additional awakening with his leader and the sacrifice card, so he didn't preference having the additional newfound power, which could probably be the reason for that. Personally, I still prefer newfound power just because it's a better threat, especially with the double strike cards, but that's what we went with here. Again, this 1-drop Gohan from Clash of Fates, it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. You can kind of make him really big and swing. I just don't think it's ever really better than the 1-drop newfound power. All right, moving on. We got pretty much a lot of your standard slug package. You got the wings, you got the New Again, Young Again, all that good stuff. The free blocker, Angeal. You got the 4 Destruction King. The Destruction King is really, really good in this deck because Wings makes Young Again a 3-drop. So for 1 energy, you can play the Young Again off the Destruction King and then evolve off of that. So that's a really good synergy going on right there. So that's a really good stuff. You can also play the Angeal for 1, which is a really good card to play out. He puts on a lot of pressure. He's one of those you really want to deal with. Looking at his extra card stuff, we'll get into the tech type stuff here in just a second. But so Family Kamehameha, that's really good removal. If your opponent has a battle card that has an energy cost that's greater than or equal to their current energy, you just kill it. So this is really good for things like the Broly chain. Whenever they get the big 8-drop Broly out, you can just pay 1 and kill it. Or even like Apocal Great Ape, maybe that's another option because they're never going to have the 6 energy it is to actually cast him. They're EX evolving him out, everything like that. So this is just really hard removal for that. So not bad at all. I think access to hard removal is really, really good in this format. So any type of way you can find it is good. Going along that lines, he's also running 1 Dimensional Banisher Fu, which kind of does the same thing. It just sends something to the warp. It's also a 20k double striker, so you can kind of push in for game with that for 1. For negates, we have a split of a 3-2 of Sacrifice and 2 of the Shocking Death Ball. So Sacrifice works with the Lord Slug because Lord Slug is a Namekian. You can take a life instead of paying its energy cost and negate the attack. And then Shocking Death Ball has a Sparking 5. You can take a life and then you kill something whenever you negate. I don't know that Sacrifice is... I think I'd prefer to run 4 Death Ball and maybe 2 Sacrifice, or even not even have Sacrifice, just run the 4 Death Ball and put that extra card somewhere else here. Maybe a Family Kamehameha or something like that. I just don't think that Sacrifice is good enough when you have the Shocking Death Ball, which is just better, like, all the time. I guess technically you could take the life without needing Sparking, but the way you're taking life so quickly with the leader, I don't know that the Sacrifice is overly necessary. Alright, next up, we've got Preemptive Strike. Just a good, if you're playing a green leader, you probably want access to Preemptive Strike just to, remove a battle card whenever it comes into play with an energy cost of 4 or less, just really strong. And then finally, he's got the Dark Temptation Toa, which is just more removal. It pumps up your leader, gives him plus 5k, which is really strong. And looking into the tech type options, so he main decks 2 of the double impact Krillin. So this is really good. This kind of eliminates General or Mercenary Tau, which is a really hard counter to this deck. Any other like random, 2-drop barrier cards, setup type cards he can kind of deal with, which is strong. I don't know if it's necessary to have it in the main deck over some other options, but I can see where we're going. And then finally, like the spicy of the tech, he's got the Zamasu, so he's the barrier blocker, barrier blocker indestructible. So I remember either reading or watching on a video where he mentioned that this was for the Broly matchup because it's indestructible. Broly can't KO it. So if they have got the Broly out and they're like 1 life or 2 life, you swing him, dump hand, and they just can't stop it without negating. Again, just a cute option. I don't know, again, if it's necessary main. Maybe if you're expecting like an absolute ton of Broly. But even then, it only costs 2, and if they negate it and it's literally dead, you can never use it again. Which again, if you're saving it for that moment, it's not bad, but I just don't know that it's overly necessary. Moving on to the sideboard, we've got 2 more Family Kamehameha, which is again really good. It looks like we've got some minus Killy Zone, always good. Cronoa, always good. Heavily Wizard Demiga, you're going to see this a lot in a lot of these sideboards. So it's a 0-5k combo, and then on your turn, if you combo with this card, if your opponent has 3 energy, you can choose one of their battle cards with a power of 30k or less, I think, or 30k or more, with ignoring barrier and KO it. So again, this is kind of working the same concept as the Father-Son Kamehameha. Or the Father-Son Kamehameha, where this will just kill big things like the big Broly, baby, things like that. That's just really all it is. I know people were expecting a lot of Broly, so that's probably why you're seeing these heavily in the sideboard, and as we get along to the other list, you'll see several of these. Moving on to that, we've got 2 Tien Shinhan returning fire. This is great. This is how you counter Mill, more specifically Janemba, so they can't untap their energy whenever you play it down. It really hurts a lot of other blue decks in general, or any decks that like to manipulate the energy, so a really strong card. You're going to see that pretty regularly. We've got more Dimensional Banisher Fu, again, just hard removal. And then finally, we've got the Mass Saiyan, the Mysterious Warrior. Again, more removal. This is a little bit different than the Banisher because this chooses, this could be a wide removal as opposed to just a direct hard removal. I don't know if you need both. There is a lot of removal going on here. We get the Fu, we got the Family Kamehameha, we got the Heavenly Wizard Demigra, Double Shot Krillin, and all that kind of going on. So I don't know if you need all that. It is a very efficient, 20k double strike attacker, so that's never bad too. All in all, it's an alright list. I think it went a little bit all over the place. And I think, as you'll see in the sideboards that we're going to see, I think it was rather fortunate that, just generally speaking, not a lot of people were running Mercenary Tau. I think all in all, Slug's not in a horrible spot in the format. I just don't know if it's quite good enough. But it definitely deals with Janemba really well, so that's something to take note of. Alright, so moving on, we have our first Janemba deck. This is Miguel Ochoa. We'll pull up the visual view. Pretty standard list here. There's nothing, really to point out. He is main decking Cronoa, just kind of punish Broly players and things like that. He's got Borgos in the main. You're seeing a lot of them kind of come out. I think Borgos is, here or there. I don't have a problem with it being in the main deck. I don't know if it's necessary to be in the main deck as opposed to the side. The one thing that's really interesting is he is running the 2 Deadly Defender Vegeta as well as the Awe-Inspiring Vegito. Deadly Defender comes out on turn 3 as opposed to the Vegito that comes out on turn 4. I'm curious how important this ever ended up being over the Vegito. I always think Vegito is better because he's always a 20k versus the Vegeta is a 15k on defense. So that is kind of interesting. He is also running a heavy line of negates. He's got the 4 Dimension Magic, 2 Whis, and 2 Mafuba, which is, again, a lot of negate power there. But other than that, like I said, it's pretty standard. It's not running the Psyche Demon in the main. So that's either here or there. Generally speaking, now you're seeing Psyche run pretty regularly main. The Janemba mirror is not as prevalent anymore as it was, so you're seeing people kind of put that back in. It's also only running 2 of the Destroyer King. I don't know if that's maybe what I had access to type of thing, as opposed to running, I think this one and Demon Sword are the ones you really want to bump up versus the Reality Bender. But again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's still solid numbers. You're still got 10 mil cards right there, which is strong. Moving on to his side, we've got 2 Pilaf, which is just a really good card in general. It can punish a lot of people for not sequencing correctly. You can drop this on if someone swings with the Bardock, take out its swap early, kind of slow them down. You can get rid of double strike, triple strike, all that kind of good stuff. More Whis for more negates. He's got the FR Goku, which again is really strong. You never know what you're really going to come up to. That's one of those instant almost sideboard cards for blue. It's got 2 Kami, the Global Unifier. Again, that's just a good board wipe for aggro and swarm. Additional Cronoa. He's got 2 of the Mercenary Tower, which is really strong, like I said. Janemba kind of almost hard loses to Slug. Has a really hard time with hand destruction in general, so running the Tau is just really good. And then finally, he's got the 2 Haru just for the random matchups that those become necessary because they're really good in general. The only thing that I think he's probably missing is he's not running Tien himself, which again just kind of seals up the mirror for you. I don't know if you need the additional 2 Whis. I think you've already got several negates in the deck. You could probably pull those out and put into Tien. It'd probably do fine. I don't even know about Haru if that's overly necessary. Yellow Broly's kind of fallen off. I mean, I guess green Broly's still prevalent, so that's probably not. That's probably fine. Yeah, I think you could probably pull up the Whis, probably put into the Tien, and sideboard would look a little bit better. But it's a Janemba deck. There's not a lot to discuss about it. Alright, so now we've got our pan list from Zachary Wheeler. This is just a very, very standard pan, which is not a bad thing at all. It's actually a very good thing. I love this list. I think it's relatively consistent. You can see the numbers, a lot of 4 ofs, a lot of 3 ofs. Generally speaking, the only 2 ofs are cards that you're not going to need as often. Bodyguard Legix, you don't want a whole clump of those. Glory Obsessed or the Agent of Destruction Vegeta, you're not going to want to see a ton of those. So having those at 2 ofs are fine. He is running Time Patrol over like the Supreme Kai. That's really just a preference. The advantage of running the Time Patrol Trunks is that you can fish him out with Everybody's Pal Yamcha, which is really strong. You do lose that minus 5k, so it's just kind of whatever you're valuing a little bit more there. This is a Zeno variant. which is generally where you're going to see. He is running Scientist Fu in the main. I probably would have liked to seen something like a Banisher Fu there instead. I think the removal is a little bit more important right now than the draw. Pan does a pretty good job drawing herself. 3-4 Seeing hits good. There's no access to Ginyu here in the main or the side. Generally, you're seeing Ginyu now. It was probably just a preference to run the Agent of Destruction over the Ginyu. And then as far as the negates are concerned, the 4 after image is just great. And then the 2, is that all you've got? That's pretty standard what you're seeing right now. Majority of just like Pan or Baby decks is 2, is that all you got? And 4 after image. 2, is that all you got? Is just a great negate in itself. It's one of those cards like Nimbus. If they sequence incorrectly, you can really punish people. Like if they have 2 cards in play, they swing with leader first, you just play this, pitch a card, you could potentially kill 2 cards. So it's almost up to like, it could be at best, it's like a 3 negates for 1 energy in a card. So just really strong there. But again, all in all, just pretty standard what you're going to see with Pan. Majority of Pans are going to be like a 40 card, 42 card mirror. There's just a couple different little tech choices here or there. In terms of the side, we got 2 Saiyan Kaba, which is pretty standard. Just gives you extra pressure for those matchups you want to go extra aggro on, like things like Janemba or Shenron, things like that. We've got 3 minus Killy Zone, which is good to save our hits or save our chain attack into Zenos. We've got 3 Mercenary Tau, so he was ready for the Tau matchup, or for discard. Curious to see if he ever ended up running into the Slug, if these ever actually became relevant. He's got 3 Haru Haru, again, just really good versus the green-yellow matchups. It's a great chain target, get into play, untap your stuff. 3 Tien Shinhan, Returning Fire, again, just really good for Janemba. Pans generally has a pretty good Janemba matchup, but this really just helped kind of shore that up. It's also a chain target for other kind of matchups that aren't blue-red that run energy manipulation, so that's kind of important to know. And then finally, another Scientist Fu. Again, I probably would have preferred to see like a Banisher Fu, maybe main, or maybe put like a Fu Shrouded in Mystery here as opposed to an additional Scientist Fu. I think that probably works out a little bit better. I don't know, like I said, I don't think you necessarily need the extra draw. And it's hard to run something that needs 7 cards in the drop after you're already playing the Time Patrol Overwhelm. So, but all in all, very solid list. I have no real complaints with this one. Alright, moving on, we have Isaac Sarver with Broly Storm. This is, again, another very straightforward, very consistent type list. It's a lot of 4-ofs, a lot of 3-ofs, with the exception of, a 2 Battering and a 2 Adopt a Father Gohan. This is what you're going to see in majority of Broly lists. His probably exception being that he's running 4 Gine as opposed to traditional, you're seeing like 2. He's also running 4 Planet Vegeta. Sometimes you only see like 3 there. But other than that, really, this is a standard Broly Storm list. There's not a lot to, complain about. It's a great list in general. I love this. I love Broly Storm, and I love seeing consistent lists with it. I'm curious to see how his matchups went, what he struggled with, or what he actually ran into that gave him problems. I'm not sure that he made top 8. So I'd be curious to see how he ended up doing. Alright, moving on to the side, we've got 2 additional Battering Lasers, which is just always good to have. We've got 3 Time Magic, just, helps you versus Shenron and things like that. Things that like to have dual attack, things like that, tap them down. We've got 2 Vegeta striving to be the best, just removal. And then he's got a little Height of Mastery package. I'm not sure if it's overly necessary to run it, but it's cool to see. I know Justin Rios kind of made that popular, running just a traditional Broly Storm and siding into the Height of Mastery package. So he's got 2 Path to Greatness and 3 Height of Mastery. I don't know if those numbers are correct, so I'd be curious how often that ever ended up coming up. And then finally, he's got 1 Cronoa, just for Sugesh type decks, and then he's got 2 Mercenary Tau. I think the only thing I probably would change is I don't know if you need 4 Battering Lasers. Maybe cut the 2 Batterings, maybe include 2 Tien Shinhan, and other than that, though, I think the list is pretty solid. Yeah, like I said, this is a pretty traditional standard Broly Storm list. Nothing big there. Alright, so we got Brian Reed. This is Brian Reed, he's running Green Broly. Alright, so let's take a look. Again, this is, a lot of these lists are kind of standard. This is what you're going to see with the Green Broly. He's running 3 of the 1-drop, 4 of the Galamite. I'm seeing a lot of this 1-drop Premonition Paragus. I don't know how good that actually is as opposed to running more of the promo. It could be an option, like if you don't have the promo, maybe that's where we're running more of this. I just feel like the 4 of the promo is probably better, gives you more options for removal and stuff like that, so you can go up the engine. We got the Paragus Super Combo, which is good. We got the Broly line. He is running the SCR. He's running Mira, which I actually really like Mira in this deck. It gives you a finisher. Sometimes Broly has problems like really like getting over the top. So I like Mira in these lists. And then as far as the extra cards, 2 Tragic Awakening. He's got the 2 Control Mechanisms. He's also running Family Kamehameha for removal. He's got the 4 Shocking Death Ball and then the 3 Preemptive Strike. So again, just pretty solid list. Main deck. In the side, we got 2 Kind Wish, which is pretty good. We got 3 Cold Bloodlust, so he's got a little bit of a yellow package. And then he's got some Nimbus over here. He's got 2 Vegeta striving to be the best. So Nimbus is obviously just, for swarm type, aggro type decks. Vegeta's some removal. And he's got the 4-drop Goku. I'm not 100% remember what it does, but I think it brings in a 1-drop Saiyan. So you get this guy back, or you get the Paragus back, and you can play it pretty cheap. I remember it's from the starter deck. Not 100% sure what it does. So I'd be curious to see what the logic was behind those, because you never really want to put the 1-drop back into play. I remember actually watching him on stream. I think he ended up getting punished for that. He put this back into play, and then Isaiah Herring just Dementia Banisher food it and killed it. Took his last life without swinging. And then finally, he's got 3 Tien Shinhan returning fire, again, just really for the Janemba matchup. Or not, yeah, for Janemba. Kind of the same thing as before. You could either cut the Kind Wish or this 4-drop and maybe look to include either Cronoa or potentially Mercenary Tau. But other than that, pretty solid Broly list. Alright, so now we've got Michael Peck, and we have a blue, black Vanilla Sun Goku. So this is the first time we're actually getting a look at one of these lists. Of all the Vanilla Goku lists that we're going to look at today, this is actually my favorite one. This is just kind of a blue beatdown. So we've got the Champa, we've got the Champa effects, we've got Awakening Talent Pan to help us awaken. We've got 4, 8, 12 of the vanillas, and we're running the Great Saiyaman. We're also running all Saiyans, if you'll notice that's kind of the trend here. Preface of Recovery is pretty good. It lets you really kind of push and attack. It's got barrier as well. 1 at all cost Vegeta, that's kind of an in-game option. This deck usually will stay at pretty high life because it awakens so quick. Running the Trunk Super Combo, again, that's relevant because it's a Saiyan. 3 of the Training Buddy Krillin, which helps get you the 2 20k vanillas out. And then we've got the Masked Saiyan, or Black Masked Saiyan, the Devastator. So how this works is if your leader's black and he swings, if there's at least 15 Saiyans in both your and your opponent's drop area combined, basically he pushes a free 1 damage. Whether they combo out of it, they negate it, whatever they do, he's going to deal damage. So it's a really great way to kind of finish the game. We got our 4 Sensu Beans, we got our 4 Son Goku The Adventure Begins, 4 Power Bursts, and let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 balls, it looks like. I'm always a fan of running the additional 4-star balls. I think it's just such a good card and so much value to not run it. But again, like I said, of the Vanilla Goku list from this weekend, I think this ended up being my favorite. It's just pretty solid. You know exactly what it's doing, and I think that Black Masked Saiyan the Devastator is a really cool play. Moving on to the side, we got 1 Goku striving to be the best, just again kind of helps versus those aggro matchups. We've got 2, looks like Kami and maybe a Dende there. Yeah, Dende new to the job, and then 2 Kami to kind of get board removal. 2 Cronoa. He's also running a Toki Toki, just 1 Toki Toki, which is kind of cute, I guess. It lets you get any one of these. I think I'd rather just run additional whatever card I'm wanting, whether it's an additional Dende or additional Cronoa, as opposed to the 1 Toki Toki. I feel like if you're going to do that, you run like multiple Toki Toki and then just like 1 of each of one of these, but it's probably fine. He's also running 3 of the Heavenly Wizard Demigra, like we talked about earlier. That helps deal with like the Brolys and the big things that like to come out pretty cheap. He's got 1 Deadly Defender Son Goku. I'm not sure if that ever became relevant. It is a Saiyan though, so that's always something to pay attention to. And then finally, he's got 4 of the Tien Shinhan Returning Fire, so he's really kind of going hard versus the Janemba matchup. Kind of same thing as we talked about before. I think I'd probably pull up the Toki Toki and the Deadly Defender and probably play 2 of the Mercenary Tau. Obviously, it's easy to say that in hindsight now that Slug's done well, but I just feel like it's one of those you should go in prepared for some type of hand destruction, not Slug necessarily, but having a way to defend versus hand destruction is always good. But all in all, my favorite of vanilla lists. It's really interesting to see these decks run and pilot how different they are. Alright, moving on. Now we have another blue-black vanilla Goku. Let's see, what was his name? This is Nicholas Green. So he went a little bit different. He is still running a heavy Saiyan package, except he's going with 3 Deborah over the Great Saiyaman. I'm not sure the reason behind only running 3 of the Deborah. I feel like having 4 of the at least 4 of the 30Ks is really good because the Goku gets that out. He is running Commander Red, so it's another reason to run multiple of the 30Ks. I think the 30K is really what you want to go with as opposed to the 20Ks, which the 20Ks are nice, but being able to play the 30K for 2 is just super strong, especially when you top 4-star ball on top of that. He's got Preface for untapping energy. He's got 2 at all cost Vegeta, goes a little bit more aggressive in the late game. He's also running 2 of the Surprise Attack Frieza, so again, whenever you KO battle card, you can play this for Freeze 15k body with crit, which is pretty good. It's okay. I don't think it's overly necessary, but you know, crit's never bad. He's running 4 of the Bonds of Friendship, Android 8, which is just a searcher, which generally speaking, you're not really wanting to search the cards out of the deck, unless you need one to combo so you can awaken. But really the main point of him is his secondary effect. Whenever a Goku leaves your drop area, or leaves the battle area, or is KO'd, you can pop a battle card. And right now it's being ruled that if you combo with the Kid Goku, that ability triggers, so you've got removal right there. He's running 4 of the Trunks Super Combo. He's also running 4 of the Training Buddy Krillin, so he's really going deep and trying to get these vanillas out. 2 of the Commander Red, like we talked about, gets you a 30k from the deck with the drop, so you can really kind of push there. He's also running Beyond Darkness Demigra, which is interesting. I'm curious if this came out very often. Obviously, he's running, you know, let's see, like 4, 8, 12, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So he's got several, but enough black cards for that to actually be live. I'm just curious if he ever really got to the 5 energy to make it come out. And then moving on, we've got 4 Senzu Bean, and then we got 1, 2, 3, 4 4-star ball. And then finally, for our negate, we've got the 3 Power Burst. So again, this is kind of what you're going to see pretty standard in terms of the blue, black vanilla Goku. There's not a whole lot of variance on how these are going to be built. Moving on to the sideboard, he's got 1 Deborah here. Again, I think I probably would have rather seen that in the main deck. We've got another at all cost Vegeta. We got another Surprise Attack Frieza. We've got 3 minus Killy Zone. 3 Cronoa. We've got 3 of the Heavenly Wizard Demigra. And then a cute little tech here is we've got 3 of the promo Super Saiyan 3 Bardock. So what this does is it removes big guys off the board. I think you overwhelm him in for like 4, and then he kills things 25 or more on your opponent's battlefield, like all of them at the same time. So it's pretty strong there. It's a cute little option. I think I'm totally fine having this. I think I probably would have cut the Frieza, the at all costs, and the Deborah. I would put the Deborah in the main, but and then run things like Tien, at least Tien, if not Mercenary Tau. I'd like to find Mercenary Tau room, but if not, Tien's fine too. But again, it's just good seeing new kind of leaders and new interesting ideas. Seeing that Set 6 is producing these archetypes. We're also starting to see a lot of the variety that the Son Goku leader provides. We've got 2 of the same colored list back to back, but they're very different in what they're trying to do. Alright, next up we've got Anthony Hernandez with Mil Nimba. A pretty standard Mil Nimba list, excuse me. You're not going to have a whole lot of spice out of an Anthony Hernandez list. I think what you're going to be more like necessarily surprised at is his lack of inclusions as opposed to his inclusions. But generally speaking, everything's going to be relatively consistent. He's only running 2 of the Awakening Talent Pan, which I think is a little weird. Usually you're going to see like 3 or 4 because you want to see that early so you can kind of get some more card advantage and awaken. He's also a main decking 2 of the Trunks Power Overseeing Time. I imagine the only reason he's main decking this is he was expecting to see a lot of Janemba. I don't know as far as the whole tournament, but I can just speak to top 8 or top 16. There was only the 2, so I'm curious if he kind of regrets main decking that as opposed to something else. He's going the kind of traditional, 4 Demon Sword, 4 Agent of Destruction, 2 Reality Builder that we talked about earlier. He is maining the Psyche Demon, so he can kind of go up the chain. He's also running 4 the Childish. Usually you see like 3 or 4-3, but he's running a 4-4. Like I said, Anthony Hernandez, typically that's where you're going to see a lot of 4-ofs in his lists. Yeah, other than the overseeing time in the main, it's kind of what you're generally going to see. In terms of the sideboard, we've got 2 Goku striving to be the best. We got 2 Kami. He had a big kind of different inclusion here. He had no escapes on Goku, which prevents cards from bouncing back to his hand, back to their opponent's owner's hand. So curious to see if he was expecting to see a lot of the red Gogeta. I don't personally think that was getting just like a whole bunch of hype, but you never kind of know what the kind of whispers people hear, especially at events. That could have been like a late inclusion. But it is definitely an interesting pick. We've got 2 Cronoa, we've got 2 Mercenary Tau, 2 Haru Haru, and then 3 Tien. So other than the no escape, it's a pretty standard list. The only thing that, like I said, you're kind of shocked by it not including is Borgos. So I'm curious if not having access to Borgos ever bothered him. Like, especially in the mirror, that's one of those cards you kind of want access to. As you'll see in the Super Shinron list that we'll look at a little bit earlier, Borgos kind of plays a kind of nice role in that as well. Alright, now we have another yellow Broly. This is from Matt Spitzer. There's a promo Broly. Alright, so this is a Height of Mastery build as opposed to a Storm. Kind of looking at the list, it's for the most part has the general idea of what they're trying to generally do. He does have some interesting inclusions. He's running a 1-2-1 split on the super combos. He's got the 1 Jocko, 2 Pure Hearted, and 1 Sugesh. The Jocko is a little interesting to me. Generally, you see like either a 2-2 Pure Hearted Sugesh or like a 3-1 Pure Hearted Sugesh, since you can always search out the Pure Hearted or Sugesh with the Planet Vegeta. So that's an interesting one right there, especially since he's running so much Overwhelm and he's running the Jocko, which, kind of interesting there. I think Jocko is the Overwhelm or Sparking Super Combo. He may be the life one. He's got 3 of the Barrier Gohan and only 1 of the Dependable Dynasty. That's kind of standard what you're going to see in terms of a Height of Mastery list. Moving on from that. He's also running this Super Saiyan 3 Bardock that we talked about earlier in the main deck. So he's really going hard versus other Broly type decks, or just kind of really anything that likes to get out the big stuff cheap. He's also running the Overseeing Time. I imagine this is more specifically to get back the Victory Strike as opposed to a Janemba counter, because there's only the 1 in the main deck. And then he's got the 1 of the Mira, which, again, I'm not crazy about this split of Overwhelm cards. I see what we're doing, but I just think you need to stick to 1 or 2, or at least have like one of these be a cheaper Overwhelm option as opposed to where they're at. He's also running the Gine here to support, which is kind of a new inclusion. I think Marcel Russell was one of the first one to really make this an inclusion in a lot of these decks. It's just another swap target off the Bardock, excuse me. And then whenever she swings, you mill the top 3 cards of your deck. So this kind of fills up your drop for Overwhelm or Sparking and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of extra cards, we got 3 Bad Rings, so really aggressive there with the Bad Rings. Only 2 Bloodlust, which is interesting. And he's running 1 of the Ultimate Power Gohan, which is removal. I'm not sure how I feel about having it main deck when you're running the Sugesh and you want to get out the Path to Greatness, as opposed to... well, actually, now that I'm looking at this list, there's no Path to Greatness. Oh, there he is. He's right there in front of me. Excuse me. He's literally right the next card. Yeah, I think you'd rather Sugesh into this as opposed to this. So I feel like maybe you should have included more Sugesh as opposed to Jocko or whatever it was. But I mean, generally speaking, it's a pretty standard, kind of I won't say standard, it's running a lot of tech. It's a more techy Height of Mastery list. On the sideboard, we've got 2 Crusher Ball, which just kind of deals with different threats. Flying Nimbus. He's got Universe 7 Rep. Generally, you kind of see that in the main deck, so you can find the Height of Mastery, or you can find the Victory Strike. Too striving to be the best. Run Cronoa. He's already running 2 in the main. I don't know if you need an additional 1 in the side. He's running 3 Heavenly Wizard de Migra, and then 1 more Overseeing Time, and 1 more Mira. So again, it looks like a list to me that's just trying to cover a lot of the bases at the same time instead of being more focused on what it's trying to do. I didn't ever see this play on stream, so you don't know if it got punished or not or anything like that. But one Champa is another one that's interesting. Usually you see a couple more because you want to take advantage of that package with Mira. But, I mean, it's a good engine in general. Broly leader's is really strong. So nothing to really complain about. I think just some of the picks are interesting. Alright, next up we have James Grant. He's also running green Broly. So this is one of the more interesting ones that we saw this weekend. So this is running your traditional green Broly package. But it's also running a Super 17 package, which is really cool to see. I'm not sure how well it does, but it's definitely cool to see. So he is running the whole Infernal Machine package to really discard cards. This card can't be negated, all that kind of stuff. He is running the SCR too. Tragic Awakening, Gothamite. Everything else is relatively standard. Yeah, I'm curious to see the thought process behind running the Super 17 package other than just, to fill spots. Usually you kind of see those as more consistency type cards or negates or that kind of stuff, but interesting to see, that's for sure. Again, I don't know if it's necessary, but, moving on to the sideboard, we've got 2 A Kind Wish, we've got 3 Cold Bloodlust, looks like 3 Master Roshi, 2 Cronoa, 2 Heavenly Wizard de Migra, and 3 Tien. Pretty standard here. Roshi's probably more yellow energy than anything. He is running a really short yellow package in order to ever side that in, so I'm curious if that was overly productive for him. I don't think I necessarily change anything on the side. Maybe find room for Tau, like we talked about earlier. Broly kind of suffers from hand destruction as well, but other than that, nothing to shout out that we've not mentioned already with the Super 17 package. Alright, so now we have our first Gogeta promo. This is from Frisco Foss. So this is a red-blue ramp engine. So it is running, so what the Gogeta promo does, for anyone that doesn't know, it searches the top 5 of the deck at the top of the turn. You can either get a Vegeta or Goku red BR card, or a blue Veku card. So really what this deck is trying to do is try to get into Veku as soon as possible to ramp, and then you're kind of playing your big mid-range threats. You got the Gogeta, you've got Kefla, you got Super Saiyan, Dragon Fist, and then the more interesting one is the 8-drop World Martial Arts Tournament SCR, the Goku Oob. It's got Fu Shrouded Mystery. So the deck, it has a strategy. It's trying to ramp and then play big things and just kind of win that way. A valid strategy, for sure. I would have really loved to see this on stream to see how well it panned out. Moving into the side, 2 Senzu Beans. Going back to the main deck, 2 Senzu Beans. That's like my big red flag. I'd rather see, 4 Senzu Bean. I feel like that's kind of a must-have if you're going to run a type of deck like this. You need to run Senzu Bean. You can maybe cut it out all cost and cut one of these 3-drop Gokus and run your 4th Senzu Bean. Because he's running the 2 additional on the side, and I just feel like those should be main deck. We've got Mafuba, Objections. We've got the 3-drop Martyr Vegeta, which kind of board wipes, and then we've got the 3 Hero Revive Gogeta, and then another Fu Shrouded Mystery. Kind of curious why the Gogeta Revived isn't in main. I feel like that's a better target as opposed to some of these, like the Dragon Fist or even the Oob, Goku Oob. I feel like Gogeta is just better than having those, just because it's a better win condition. Removing your opponent's hand down to 3 and then, triple strike. It's just really good. Kefla's cute. Glad to see that card kind of make a little bit of a return. I'm kind of curious, how well this deck did. I know there was a lot of aggro in top 8, so I'm curious to see how this managed through all that. Alright, next up we have another blue-black Vanilla Goku. Again, this is more similar to that second list that we saw, where it's running the Deborah line, and it's running, you know, a 3 Deborah and then 8 of the 20k vanillas. It's also running the 8er. Actually, I think this is, if it's not the same list, it's a very similar list. I think it's actually pretty close. So same kind of comments apply before. I think I'd rather have 4 Deborah and maybe go less on the 20Ks. I'm not 100% sold on the surprise attack Frieza. I understand what it's doing. I just don't think it's overly necessary. Same thing with Demigra. I think generally this deck is going to finish its games by turn 4, turn 5. So I don't know if the Demigra is overly necessary. But other than that, like, same comments that we had before apply. It's just really cool to see this deck in general. Alright, next up we have Super Shenron Storm from Danny Nugent. I'm always going to pronounce that wrong. Alright, so this was kind of the shock deck of the tournament. Outside of all the vanilla Goku success, this was the one that caught people by surprise. So it's a Storm list, but it's running Super Shenron, so it's being incredibly aggro. Turn 1, 2, and 3, like milling your deck all the way down near the bottom, and then recycling and having an additional turn where your opponent really can't respond. It's only running 3 Bardock, and it's really relying on the dependable Son Goku. And it's real the MVP of the deck is Explorer Bulma. So it's similar to Preface in the terms of it comes into play. You untap 2 energy, except she mills the top 2 and you draw a card. So this is really cycling through your deck. So you have to have at least 20 cards in your drop area and the 7 Dragon Balls, so 27 in total in order to get the wish off. So this really helps just accelerate that. Personal Ambition is just a free draw card. It's just pay 1, draw 1, untap 1. So it's just free cycle through the deck. Pan helps you cycle through the deck. Scientist Fu is the one that I'm a little bit interested in, why we're going that route as opposed to like a Mira, because Scientist Fu needs so many cards in the drop. I think Mira would have been potentially better, especially since you're running Chomper, the Kai. And then the Crisis Crusher in the main deck is absolutely necessary for this deck. This deck really struggles versus Borgos, Black Mass Sand, or the Whis that has the same Borgos effect. So you have to almost run this main deck in order to deal with those kind of threats. Moving on to the side, we've got Victory Strike. I think this was more for the lulz. There's literally no way to play it. We've got 2 Crusher Ball. Just kind of disruption. We got Flying Nimbus. We got Godly Support Whis, I think is what it's called, but it has the Borgos effect. We've got 2 Striving to be the Best Vegeta, which is removal. You've got 2 Granoa. More Crisis Crusher if that is ever necessary, and then 3 Tien. Just for the Janemba. The Tien is really clutch in this deck, because I mean that's literally how you beat Janemba. You play this on your turn, you use the Shenron Wish, and now you have the remainder of that turn, your following additional turn, and your opponent's turn where the Janemba player can't untap energy. So if you ever can get this off on a turn where they're tapped out, you almost kind of guarantee a win, because they can't play Dimension Magic, they can't Senzu Bean, they can't do any of that kind of stuff to untap their energy. So really strong. This is another one of those decks similar to Lord Slug. I think this had the big, huge benefit of being a surprise. No one was expecting this. I heard some rumblings about this the night before. I think this did well in the Victory Strike little side event the night before. And I think it got a little bit of attention there, but I don't know if people ever actually took it seriously, but it took people by surprise. I'm pretty sure this is probably the only thing like this at all running in the tournament, and it made it all the way to the top. I know it made top 8 at least, so really cool to see this. I'm excited to see if this is going to have any staying power. Personally, I don't think so, but you never quite know. Alright, so we're just going to cover this one quickly. This is another ramp Gogeta from David B. Asadi. The only reason we're going to cover this quickly is because this list was incomplete. There was only 48 cards provided on the list, and it was missing super combos. So whenever I inputted this list, I threw these 2 super combos in because you assume the deck ran super combos. So there was some type of deck list error in here. But this is almost a mirror to the list that we saw earlier, the exception being this ran Gotenks in the main, which is kind of cool. And Chain Attack, I believe. I don't remember if that was in the original list. I think the chain attack is really here just to get out the Veku earlier, or whenever you can, instead of fusing it. So, like I said, that's all we're really going to cover, just because this list was incomplete. Alright, now moving on to the top 2 list. We'll look at the second place list first. This is another vanilla Goku, except this is a yellow-black one. This was piloted by Isaiah Herring. Again, another variety of the vanilla Goku list. This is really taking advantage of the yellow engine to be able to draw cards with the I'm the World Champion. If you have a Kid Goku in play, you draw 2 cards, which is really strong. Wishmaker Dende is a really cute kind of tech. It lets you search more of your 4-star balls. My only issue with this is the vanilla count. So we only have 3 20Ks and we got 6 30Ks, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. My issue is more with the 3 20Ks. Because you're main decking 2 Training Buddy Krillin and 2 Dimensional Support Trunks, and you're only running 3 20Ks, there's so many times where these could get stuck in the hand, stuck in the life, where these just effectively become dead cards. So I'd like to either see more of these or cut these down. I'd probably cut the Dimension Support Trunks. Important note to note, with Dimension Support Trunks, so you go and get a vanilla and put it into play and it gains critical. Because now it has critical, it's no longer a skillless card, so you lose the advantage of the 4-star ball in order to give it a buff. Which probably doesn't come into play super often, but it is something to pay attention to. He's also running Demigra, which I think is interesting, since you are running Overwhelm. But can't complain too much. He did really well. He got 2nd place, and losing to the finals in Broly the way he did there's not a lot he could do. The Broly player drew like a god, so. But all in all, this is probably going to be kind of the standard yellow-blue or yellow-black you're going to see moving forward. I still would like to see improve these numbers a little bit, whether it's including more 20K vanillas or cutting one of these down to include more cards. Moving on to the side deck, we've got 3 Flying Nimbus just for Swarm. We've got 2 Mercenary Tau, 2 Haru Haru, 3 Tien Shinhan returning fire. I can't quite tell what that card is. We got 2 Banisher Fu, and then we got the Masked Saiyan. Let me see if I can see what this sideboard card is. Okay, so it's Trunks Power Overseeing Time. It's probably to get the Demigra back after Mill. I guess that's kind of sketch because you're overwhelming already. But all in all, again, this deck ran incredibly well. It was piloted really well. He just kind of ran into an unfortunate, Broly drawing like a god in the finals to really kind of. I don't hold that against him for sure. Speaking of which, we'll get into our final list. So we've got David Sublet's green yellow Broly. So kind of your standard Broly engine, except he is running yellow, which gives him access to Bloodlust, Frieza's Call, Master Roshi. Bloodlust and Frieza's Call are really like the main selling points to running yellow in this list. He's going extremely hard into the 1-drop. Typically you don't see this many of the 1-drops. You only see maybe 2, at the most 3. But he's got the 1-drop, he's got Ba to find the 1-drop, he's got the Frieza's Call to go fetch the 1-drop, and the leader ability to fetch the 1-drop, so he's really kind of making sure that he gets this out going as soon as possible to get up the chain, which isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, it's probably too safe, but, that's never, like I said, a bad thing. He's running 4 of the promo Paragus, which I think is correct, in the normal Broly chain, the SCR. Yeah, everything else is pretty solid here. Moving on to the side, we've got an additional, looks like a Shocking Death Ball. We've got the 6-drop set 1 Broly. I think that's more for the lulz. I doubt that was ever played. Looks like 2 Bojack Destroyer King, which is interesting. 2 minus Killzone, 2 Cronoa. We got Heavenly Wizard Demigra, Tien Shinhan returning fire, and then your Trunks Power Overseeing Time. Just to kind of get that recursion. Again, this is probably going to be your standard Broly list moving forward. I don't know that you'll see many changes, other than people may go a little bit more, not be as conservative, making sure they ensure this turn 1. They may cut this down and add more kind of tech cards or something like that. But generally speaking, this is probably your standard yellow Broly list moving forward. It ran really well, as you all saw in the finals. If you saw those, he got the SCR out 3 games in a row. Game 1, he got it out turn 3 and lost. Game 2, he got it out turn 3 and won. And Game 2, he got it out Game 3, he got it out turn 2 and won. So incredibly, like I said, he drew like a god. I don't think you can really, take that to the bank, and that's how the deck's going to work consistently, but it did when it mattered, so he won the event because of it, so props there. Yeah, guys, that is top 16. So like I said, just kind of getting into what I kind of expect from the meta moving forward. I don't know that we can take a lot of information out of this event. Obviously, we'll take out things like, Broly is here. It's a force. You have to be prepared for it. Not enough people ran like a lot of hard removal. I expect that to change, whether it be Banish or Fu, or the extra cards that give removal. You've got Family Kamehameha, you've got Gallic Gun in blue. You got a lot of different little options there for removal that I do expect to see moving forward. Yellow or Vanilla Goku is another one of those decks you have to be prepared for, and you have to be prepared for multiple variations of it, because you will see all sorts of versions of it, and everyone does something a little bit different. Obviously, they're trying to swarm and to be aggressive with their vanillas and stuff like that, but they'll go wide and tall at the same time. But then you've got red versions that are starting to get a little bit more love. You have the yellow versions, you get the blue-black versions, you got the Black Mass and the Devastator version. So definitely, if Vanilla Goku wasn't on your radar before, it better be now. In terms of things like Slug, I would not hedge my bets to see like a huge influx in Slug decks. I think, like I said, it was a great meta call. People were not prepared for it, not ready for it, not expecting it, and he was able to kind of run roughshod for a ton of people. But because of that, I think you'll see people make more of a commitment to running Mercenary Tau in their sideboard to kind of not let that happen. You don't want to take the hard loss to hand destruction just because you weren't prepared for it, when there's a card that's super cheap that you can just throw in and be prepared. But other than that, I think the meta was pretty much what we expected. The ramp Goku was interesting to see. I don't know how well it did. Like I said, I never got to watch it on stream, so I would like to see those at some point. I'll kind of scroll through and see if maybe I can catch one of those games or not. But that's interesting to see, just the fact that we have a ramp leader in the format. I think we saw one Dende on one of the sideboards, so no one was really expecting that. Moving forward, I still don't think it's overly relevant to prepare against that. If you're running any type of aggro deck, I think you're fine. Kind of cards that I would recommend moving forward: Chain Zeno. If you're not, you need access to Chain Zeno. It's one of the best combos in the game, especially right now. It's really crippling to Vanilla Goku. It's really crippling to Janemba. It's really crippling to Broly. All that kind of stuff. If you can get access to Chain Zeno, I would find a way to do it. But other than that, guys, that's it. Let me know what y'all think down below about the meta moving forward. We got Chicago coming up here this next weekend, or this weekend actually, I believe. And then we got kind of a lull until Easter when we have Dallas that shows up. So we'll have a pretty good outlook on the meta after this weekend. But other than that, guys, that is it, and we will see y'all next time.